be sold. In order to do this, they had to be sold, as you can see on the down below on the table. They had to be sold as capital appreciation bonds and convertible caps to maintain that kind of ongoing need. That's going to cause some problems as we look going forward. I think you'll catch that when we get there. On page 9, a very small series of bonds sold. Though I should point out that these numbers also incorporate the federal subsidy, interest subsidy, that was received for the CREPs. So it's not, we're not just taking the debt service, we're taking the debt service less the projected federal subsidy. On page 9, a couple of small issues sold in 2011. Didn't really affect the tax rate whatsoever, not by that much. And then on page 10, at that point, of course, now you had to decide what to do. And as I understand it, there was some surveys done, there were some public meetings, and the decision was made to not honor that pledge and to allow the tax rate to drift, the combined tax rate to drift above $60. So, in all of these decisions, you have both the financial, the legal, and the political, right? Those are sort of your three pieces of the puzzle. Financially, sure, this makes a lot of sense. I mean, it makes a lot of sense. You save taxpayers an enormous amount of money. Legally, yes, of course you could do it. You would have done it if it wasn't legal. Politically, that's a question that is going to have to be answered down the road. I understand that you did a survey. I understand that you had public hearings, but you still have lurking in the background this this document that says we believe the combined tax rate will be no greater than $60. That's still lurking out there. Okay, so that's where you are as of today, in terms of the total tax rate being at about $80, drifting around there. And now you have the $77 million that you're trying to figure out what to do with. So I'm going to turn it over to Mark Farrell. Let's go to page 12, and I'll just say one thing and then turn it over to Mark. The Measure C that was passed in 2010, even though maybe in your minds you've combined these two tax rates into $120, it has its own $60 tax rate. I'm not sure you know this, but just to make sure everybody's on the same page. That has its own $60 tax base. So now as we start looking at this next issue, the $77 million, we'll be looking at both of them, both the combined tax rate and then also just the tax rate for Measure C of $60. So with that, let me turn it over to Mark.
And so, and Dale kind of mentioned one of the legal aspects in terms of, in addition to financial and political, when we think about issuing the additional bonds off Measure C, it's the $60 tax rate legally is all we're looking at. Then obviously economically and politically we look at the effect of the tax rate on, or the effect of any future issuance on the tax rate. So here the slides change a little bit in format. On the left we now have the combined tax rates for the 2010 and 2002 elections, and on the right we just have the 2010 election tax rate. And so we've put together a few different alternatives for kind of the dollar amount of bonds you could issue today, and some different structuring ideas and different impact on the tax rates. So the first alternative we've put together is to kind of keep the combined tax rate at about $90 per 100,000. So you can see that on the left, all three colored bars, the dark gray being the 2002 election, the light gray being the previously issued bonds from the 2010 election, Measure C, and the orange is the new tax rate from the new bond issuance. And one of the things you can see is when you get out to 2027, 28, 29, there is basically no room to add any additional taxes above the current tax rate. So everything to the right of that will have to be issued as capital appreciation bonds. Kind of the orange bars to the right, those are all capital appreciation bonds. Everything to the left would be current interest bonds. So based on current interest rates, you could get to the full $77 million today. And we're assuming about a 5% interest rate on average, which I think is a conservative rate to use for right now. About $170 million total repayments, a 2.2 to 1 debt ratio. So from a financial, economic standpoint, a prudent financing to move forward with. It's nowhere near any of the limits set forth by AB 182. And something that if you have the projects to do $77 million financially, you could issue a $77 million bond and a combined tax rate of $90. Another alternative to get to the full $77 million would be to basically come up with the lowest borrowing cost, but that would also equal the highest tax rate. So we wouldn't worry about what the combined tax rate is up front. We would go to the full $60 allowed under Proposition 39. It would allow you to issue more current interest bonds up front in the earlier years, so it would save your borrowing costs. You can see now total payments down to $127 million versus the $170 million we talked about on the last slide. It would cut the amount of capital appreciation bonds you need to issue probably about in half. So again, economically, the lower cost way to finance that $77 million, but it has the highest impact to your current taxpayers, bringing the tax rate up to probably a little bit over $100 per $100,000 of assessed value over the next few years.
Can I just ask again what you said, the repayment? What was the repayment total if we had to go to just a little over $100 for?
That's about, the ratio would be 1.65 to 1.
Okay, and that was 100
and the tax rate in the early years would be about $100, a little over $100 per 100,000.
Okay, and so the total repayment was what, 127?
127.
Okay.
Versus 170. Yes.